All right, hello and welcome back to online English class. I hope you guys are doing well today. Today we're going to continue our work on OTN 2, which analyzes chapters 2 through 6 of part 1 of 1984. We are going to be working on a couple, the first two analytical points for OTN number 2. All right, we'll try to get through those as concisely as possible. But before we do that, I'd like to talk quickly about the top of the week announcements. All right, so VGQs have been suspended until further notice. Probably going to be suspended for the rest of the year. Frankly, all right. So you should have already sent your email confirming your completion of the reading for part 1. That should have been done yesterday. All right, you need to continue reading part 2, chapters 1 through 6. Okay, so that's the first part of part 2. Your reading check for that section of text will be next Monday. You need to send me an email confirming your completion of OTN 1, our close reading of chapter 1, by Thursday at 3 p.m. And then finally, just continue to complete your OTNs as we complete them in class. All right. Obviously, you need to think about your quarter 4 essay assignment, which is due about a month from now, about the prompt that we discussed in the first half of yesterday's class. All right. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our analytical work, okay, for this novel. All right, so yesterday we conducted our SQ3R, okay? We summarized what happens in chapters 2 through 6 of part 1 of 1984. Today we're going to get into our analysis of the meaning or the impressions that Orwell offers to us in chapters 2 through 6. Now, basically what chapters 2 through 6 do is they continue to expand on the exposition of the novel prior to the rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution of the narrative. Okay, so the action will rise primarily in part 2 as Winston's rebellion begins to sort of flesh itself out. He obviously gets connected with Julia and begins to get connected to the Brotherhood a little more deeply. But in part 1, obviously, what Orwell is basically trying to do is establish the background and develop the nature or the meaning of exactly what Winston is rebelling against. Okay, so he is exploring the nature of the dystopian environment and the ways in which that dystopian environment has altered Winston's internality. Okay, so the better we understand the dystopian environment, the better we understand the ways in which Winston's complexity as a character, the ways in which he seems to contradict himself and to behave irrationally and to believe things that are irrational, they make more sense because Winston obviously lives in an irrational world. All right. So the first point that I want to talk about today, we're going to talk about these 2 points, and then Thursday, we're going to be talking about these points over here. All right. Today, I want to talk about the party's recreation of the nuclear family. All right. Which is a motif in the novel. The emphasis, the party's emphasis on it being its citizens' brothers, it being its citizens' comrades or their family. All right, and that helps to develop our understanding of dystopian setting. We're going to look at page 24 through 25 for that. And then we're going to look at Winston's sort of self-contradicting or ambivalent internal dissonance as he struggles between sort of hopelessly submitting to the power of the party or hopefully rebelling against it. Okay, so he's sort of caught between hope and hopelessness, which we'll talk a little bit more about today. All right, so the first point that I want to talk about is on page 24 and 25, and it's wrapped up in Orwell's description of the family, the Parsons, that live next door to him, and that he goes across the hall to go and help with their leaky plumbing. All right. So I'm going to read you this paragraph and then I want to analyze its meaning. All right. So with those children, he thought that wretched woman must lead a life of terror. Okay. He's just referring to the Parson children who are little terrorists. Okay. Another year, 2 years, and they would be watching her night and day for symptoms of unorthodoxy. Nearly all children today were horrible. What was worst of all was that by means of such organizations as the Spies, okay, the Spies are just, it's kind of a parallel group to like Hitler's Youth. In other words, little organizations for the children of Oceania that help educate them and make them into patriotic citizens of Oceania. They were systematically turned into ungovernable little savages, and yet this produced in them no tendency whatever to rebel against the discipline of the party. Okay, so interestingly, the Oceania society seems to cultivate young children who are simultaneously incredibly disobedient to their parents, but very aggressively obedient to the party. That's very strange. Okay. On the contrary, they adored the party and everything connected with it. All right. This really reflects actual historical realities in the Nazi regime. Hitler's Youth created a kind of citizenry in Nazi Germany filled with young adolescent individuals who absolutely adored the Fuhrer, the father, their big brother, Adolf Hitler. The songs, the processions, the banners, the hiking, the drilling with dummy rifles, the yelling of slogans, the worship of Big Brother. It was all sort of a glorious game to them. All their ferocity, okay, their anger, their hatred was turned outwards against the enemies of the state, against foreigners, traitors, saboteurs, thought criminals. It was almost normal for people over 30 to be frightened of their own children, and with good reason. For hardly a week passed in which the Times, all right, the newspaper in Oceania, did not carry a paragraph describing how some eavesdropping little sneak, some child hero, the phrase was generally used, had overheard some compromising remark and denounced his parents to the thought police. Okay, so once again, this little paragraph helps develop the dystopian setting, all right, by recreating the nuclear family. Okay, so what I mean by a nuclear family is a mother and a father who give birth to and then raise the children. All right, this is the sort of smallest unit of a society, except for, of course, an individual. Okay, it's the ways in which individuals organize themselves into little families that. And typically in a free society, that family, all right, the individuals that govern that family, i.e., the mother and the father, all right, pass on their understanding of what it means to be good, all right, to their children. They try and pass on some of through educating them, all right, what it means to be a moral, reasonable person, all right, that can take care of themselves and then in the future take care of other future human beings. All right, that's how a nuclear family is supposed to work. And in a free society, those parents are allowed to pass on their personal understanding of the good or that which is moral to their children. All right, as long as their understanding of the good is not dangerous, violent, or harmful to their children or other individuals. Okay, so there obviously is a line, but all forms of free expression of those of their value system is passed from parent to child, right, through this thing that we call education. Right, teachers partner with parents in order to help develop that process. All right, in more nuanced and sometimes more complex ways. Okay, but the parents are the primary educator. Okay. So, interestingly, what does the party do, right? Well, the party replaces the parents as the primary caretaker and educator of Oceania's children, all right, through organizations like the Spies, right? They redirect these children's loyalties, all right? Their loyalties and their affections primarily to itself over and above their loyalty and affection to these private personal connections that are engendered, all right, and sort of systematized by a family unit. Okay? So, how does the party successfully do that? Well, interestingly, note what the party fulfills for these children. All right, the number one, the party fulfills the children's need for a sense of belonging. Okay, so think back to Frankenstein. All right, and what the creature is longing for or needing. Right, a sense of belonging and a sense of identity. Here's who you are, and here's where you fit. All right, we love you, we respect you because of who you are and how you fit into our community. All right. So the party, again, establishes an identity for the child and gives them a sense of belonging insofar as they image that identity or perform that identity. And it also capitalizes on some, and this is the key, right? This is the secret sauce. It capitalizes on their instinctual prejudices, all right? Their ferocity, as noted by Orwell here, is turned where? Outwards against the enemies of the state. So, very unlike, say, your parents or your teachers, especially at Redeemer Christian School, which ask you to interrogate your own prejudices, to love those that are outside of you, to question your own instincts for selfishness and rebellion against the good authority structures in your life, okay, insofar as those are good, okay? Unlike that, which is a tough product to sell to young people, by the way, the party, right, sells them a much easier, more consumable product, and that is hatred, right? Hate those other than you. Hate the enemies of the state. Hate the foreigner. Hate the traitor. Hate the saboteur. Hate the thought criminal. And be suspicious of who? Your parents. Those authority figures that typically, in a conventional nuclear family, help an individual learn how to be less selfish, learn to teach or help an individual, a young individual, to question their instincts for self-centeredness, because a human being, all right, is instinctually self-centered. A parent helps teach a kid to share, all right? A parent helps teach a kid to question, right, their prejudices toward uh, uh, treating themselves better than others, all right? Enemy love. But that is a way less consumable, way less addictive product, right? That's a tough product to sell. Believe me, as a teacher, that questioning, interrogating one's own prejudices, that's hard work. That requires discipline. Here, right, what the party does to engender, ironically, as they teach them not to trust their parents, they engender a kind of unquestioned obedience to them because they are the ones that are selling them the product that is so highly addictive. This hatred, this love of themselves over and above the foreigner, the outsider. Okay? So here, the party, right, interestingly, okay, affirms and celebrates its citizens' instincts for hatred of the other, hatred of the outsider, okay, their instincts toward selfish worship of the things that they are affiliated with and that make them feel like they have a sense of belonging and identity, okay? And through this process called negative self-identification, right, by telling them who they are and also training them who they are not, the party engenders a kind of fierce loyalty to its own authority, replacing the family, replacing the mother, the father, the brother, and the sister, all right, as the primary relationships that offer belonging and identity to its citizens. Isn't that interesting? Okay. Again, developing this dystopian environment uh, as the family unit is being restructured. Okay. The second point that I want to take a look at, all right, is Winston's ambivalent struggle between hopeless submission to the party, all right, and hopeful rebellion. Okay, so after chapter one, okay, we need to break this down really carefully. First of all, ambivalent means split. Okay, so Winston, in continuance of his sort of internal dissonance that is characterized in chapter one, Winston continues to be a kind of split person, and his internal life is split between sort of irrational feelings. Okay, well, on the one side he feels one way, and then he flips right back to feeling its opposite feeling in the next second. Okay, that's something that we would call irrational feelings. It's something that's very relatable for human beings, and it reflects a kind of internal dissonance in what we believe to be true. All right, at any one point in time. So Winston here is struggling after he has committed thought crime. All right, after he has written down with Big Brother, over and over again, committing himself to a rebellion, he then experiences a kind of two competing feelings. One, hopelessness. All right, now let me define hopelessness for us. When we talk about hope, all right, and we refer to a kind of rational hope, what you're referring to is something similar to when you come home and you're really hungry and you smell, right, your dad in the backyard grilling burgers, right? When you're not eating the meal yet, it isn't a physical reality yet, but when the smell of those burgers fills up your nostrils, right, you are filled with hope for the meal that is to come. Okay, you can almost taste it. It is a future reality, and putting your hope in that future reality is reasonable. Why? Because you can smell the fact that it's coming. All right? It's very similar to the kind of hope that Christians have in the coming redemption of Christ, right? It is reasonable to hope and to believe that God is going to do what he says, what he has said he is going to do, because he has been faithful to his promises in the past. It's a rational hope, right? He promised a Messiah. Jesus came. Okay? Jesus promises to come back. We hope in his return, right? So, in other words, those are kind of rational hopes. Okay, an irrational hope would be, I'm going to go to the top of Mount Everest and jump off of the highest part of the cliff over the deepest valley, and I'm going to hope that I can fly. Okay, no, you have not. That is an irrational hope. That is not a belief that is connected to an actual future improvement. Okay, so Winston is sort of caught between this hopeless submission to the party, all right, in which he at times feels that there is no reason for him to rebel against the party, because rebelling against the party is not connected to any rational future promise, that it will do no good. Okay? And he's caught between that experience, that feeling, and also the feeling of hopeful rebellion. All right, that what he's doing is genuinely meaningful. It is worth him staking his life on. Okay, so the struggle between these two things continues to illustrate Winston's complex character and continues to illustrate what Winston is trying to free himself of. Okay, so let's look at some examples of this. On page 25, all right, Winston refers to a dream that he had 7 years prior, he believes. Okay, and in that dream, someone who he has now learned is O'Brien. All right, so this is obviously a dream that was very memorable to him. I don't know if you have had dreams like that, but it's a kind of expression of his right. Where do dreams come from? They're generated by your unconscious mind. Right, while your brain is at rest, they sort of spring into your mind. All right, so he's got this sort of unconscious, internal, irrepressible desire. Okay, to meet with, all right, and have communion with another fellow rebel, O'Brien. Okay, and number two, to meet with him in the place where there is no darkness. Okay, obviously the place with where there is no darkness is a place where he will be free from the sort of irrational, uh, 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 dark, intellectual, moral, and spiritual tyranny of the party. Okay, that leaves him in this sort of dark space. He wants to meet where there is a place of no darkness, where there is enlightenment, where there is knowledge, where there is hope, where there is community. All right, reminds me a great deal of the pilgrims longing at the beginning of Canto 1 of the Inferno to achieve or get to the hilltop shawled in morning rays of light. All right, and out of the woods that are dark, the dark wood. All right, so here, right, this sort of dream is an expression of Winston's internal hope that he will one day get to be in this place, and he will get there not alone, but rather in community with other fellow rebels who are together attempting to create or recover a world that makes sense. Okay, notice also the fact that this dream was 7 years ago, all right, reflects or seems to signal that this kind of heaven-like atmosphere that his unconscious mind associates with heaven, a place where there's no darkness, eternal light, eternal life, right? Is almost it almost has like a prophetic element to it, right? It happened 7 years before. He now realizes that individual was O'Brien, and he now recently has met an individual named O'Brien and shared what he thinks is a rebellious moment with him. Okay? In other words, right, there seems to be very much like the words of a prophet require or inspire hope. And inspire a kind of faithful response to those that hear the prophet's words and believe that the promises will come true. All right. Winston is expressing a kind of desire and a deeper internal belief that these words are prophetic, that these words will indeed come true, and they are actually coming true. All right. That is something that inspires hope. All right. But on the next page over, okay, just as surely as those words inspire hope, on page 26, all right, his hopes are dashed, right? He writes, the sacred principles of Ingsoc, Newspeak, doublethink, and the mutability of the past, which we're going to analyze extensively tomorrow. He felt as though they were wandering. He felt as though he were wandering in the forest of the sea bottom, lost in a monstrous world where he himself was the monster. Okay, so he believes his world is monstrous, in other words, inhumane, but feels that he himself is the monster. He is the one who is pursuing aims that are not human. He was alone. The past was dead. The party killed it. The past doesn't matter anymore. It has been rewritten. Okay, all memory, all record of a world that was better than the one that he lives in, all record of a world that was even different than the one that he lives in is gone. It's dead. It doesn't exist. Okay, it doesn't live in history books, and therefore there is nothing to compare the present to. If there is no past world that was better or even different, it is reasonable to believe that life has always been the same. It's even reasonable to believe that the party has been in control forever and will endure forever, because there is no record All right, there is no record of it being different. Okay? With no memory of it being different and no record of it being different, the past is indeed dead. The future is therefore unimaginable. Why? Because there is no raw material, right? There is no raw material to imagine a better or even different world. Because the only reality which is controlled by the party, all right, is as it is at the present, with totalitarian party control and a perfect big brother who has never been wrong and never will be. A big brother who's never been out of control and never will be. All right? The past is dead. The future is unimaginable. Okay? He begins to believe that there's no evidence that a single human creature is on his side, including O'Brien. All right? He has no way of knowing that the dominion of party would not endure forever. Okay? In other words, right, he begins to question whether or not his rebellion is meaningful after all. He begins to question whether or not the party is actually, indeed, omnipotent. And rebellion against an omnipotent power is irrational. Okay? If they are indeed all powerful, rebelling against their control is always irrational and never effectual. On page 27, he recovers his hope, if only temporarily, by affirming that nothing is his own or was your own except the few cubic centimeters inside your skull. He is referring to his brain. All right. Now, as depressing and bleak as this sound, that he doesn't own anything for himself except for his own brain, this actually is an expression of a very radical form of hope. All right. In other words, right, he is saying that if his brain is still his, all right, it means that on a very basic level, he is still free. He's still genuinely, actually, internally free. And if his brain is his, then he's still free to remember a better world. And for that, and if he can't remember a better world, at least to remember the injustices and the lies of the party that he is exposed to on a daily basis. And if he's able to remember the injustices and the lies and able to even imagine a better world, it means he's able to establish a value system for himself. He's able to define that which is, quote, better. He's able to define that which is, quote, unjust, and therefore capable of imagining, of conceiving of a future that is more humane, that is worth rebelling for. Okay, so here he oscillates back to hope, but then once again back to hopelessness. His heart quailed before the enormous pyramidal shape. It was too strong. It could not be stormed. 1,000 rocket bombs would not batter it down. He wondered again for whom he was writing the diary. For the future? For the past? For an age that might be imaginary? And in front of him there lay not death but annihilation? The diary would be reduced to ashes and himself to vapor. What he means by this, all right, is that he's not going to die a martyr. Okay, because dying a martyr is an act of rebellion, okay, and in fact helps spur on rebellion, as a martyr is killed by the unjust, oppressive, tyrannical forces, all right, that are killing the individual. But that's not what the party does. The party doesn't kill you and let you be a martyr. The party destroys all evidences of your rebellion and then vaporizes you, okay? Writes you out of history, okay? Destroys any record that you had ever lived. And so where do you live on? Only in the minds of those who remember you. But memory fades. Memories can be altered. Memories are relative. And therefore, right, and they're also limited. And therefore, right, you fade out of existence and therefore fade out of reality. All right? He then, on the bottom of page 27, recovers his hope once again by affirming that uttering the truth, even if nobody hears it, right? Even if he's like a log falling down in a forest and nobody hears it, as long as he is uttering the truth, he continues, all right, to carry on the legacy of what he calls the human heritage. He's once again taking hope in the fact that his rebellion is good in and of itself. He is, again, trying to persuade his heart, all right, persuade his mind that what he is doing is right, even though his environment seems to suggest that what he's doing is insane. What he's doing is never going to help anyone. All right. He writes down greetings from the age of doublethink, even as he concludes by saying thought crime does not entail death. In other words, thought crime does not lead to death. Thought crime in Oceana is death. Death meaning the ceasing of your existence. So, in other words, what Winston is affirming here is that when you think thoughts that are against the reality that the party has imposed, when you think thoughts that are off the party line, you have basically ceased to exist, right? Your thoughts are no longer real thoughts. Your thoughts do not reflect the reality that they control. Once again, he oscillates back to hopelessness, okay? So, what does all this flip-flopping in between hope and hopelessness mean? What does it suggest to us about Winston's character in the exposition? Well, affirming the impressions that were offered to us back in chapter 1, all in all, Winston's oscillation, okay, which just means flip-flopping back and forth between Winston's oscillation between hope, that his rebellion is meaningful, and hopelessness, just complete and utter hopelessness, because his rebellion will not lead to a better future, and it will not be remembered. He's not going to die a martyr. Okay, it's not. He's not afraid to die. What he's afraid of is that his rebellion is meaningless because it's ultimately it's a rebellion that's not going to lead to any benefit whatsoever, and it won't be remembered. It won't be connected to any kind of meaning. All right. So, in other words, what this reflects is that Winston still believes, as he has been trained by the party to believe, that the party is omnipotent and eternal. All right, something that is all powerful is necessarily eternal, because something that has all power is going to also have all power over, guess what? Temporality or death or decay. Okay, so Winston believes that the party is omnipotent, that the party's power is genuinely infinite. Okay, that they genuinely do have control over reality and truth, and that stepping outside of that reality and truth, thought crime, is indeed not just something that leads to death, but something that is death. Okay? He's attempting to free himself from this irrational belief because nothing human made can be omnipotent. Nothing but something that is supernatural can genuinely be infinite, because we know that everything in the natural world is finite, that everything in the natural world is subject to decay, disintegration, and ultimately death, even political systems and societies and civilizations. Okay? So here, Winston is trying to free himself from that irrational belief that his political authorities, the party, are indeed omnipotent, that the way things are and must be the way that they always will be. Okay? He's trying to free himself from the belief that a world without the party's totalitarian control is impossible. Okay? Because if it is possible, then rebellion is something that can be done hopefully. There is reason to believe that a better world can be made. All right? Okay, tomorrow we will continue our analysis of the exposition. Once again, just affirming what we've talked about here is Winston's internal ambivalence as he is trying to free himself from the ways in which his environment has trained him to think in ways that are irrational. Okay, characterizing themselves, the party, as omnipotent. This is impossible. All right? Have a great day.